Hello there. This tutorial will give you a warm-up to the lesson and the project for this week. As always, start out by clicking Reset in Styles and Reset All Tools over here. Now click on the Draw Shape tool, choose the rectangle up here, pick a dark color from the swatches, and draw a small rectangle in the upper left corner. In the Tools, click on Transform Layer, and I'd like to call your attention to the bounding box around this little rectangle. Alright, it's not situated squarely around the rectangle because we drew it up here. We didn't draw it kind of in the middle of the stage here. What we'll need to do is set the origin point. But before we do that, I just want you to watch at what happens if you try to rotate an object without setting the origin point. I'll click down here in this handle in the corner, and here's what happens if I try to rotate it. Now I'll hit Control Z to put that back. Now click over here on your Set Origin icon, and then click nearly in the middle, as the best you can, get into the center of the rectangle, and click back over here to the Transform Layer icon. Now go ahead and point to a corner and find your Rotate mouse cursor, and you can see that there's a very big difference in how it rotates. Now do Control Z or Command Z on your keyboard to put that back to the way it was. Let's draw another shape on a different layer. In the Layers palette, click on New Layer and choose Vector. We'll go back over to Draw Shape. We'll choose the rectangle again, pick a different color, and this time draw kind of a tall, skinny rectangle near the bottom of the stage. Again, if you click on Transform Layer right now, you'll see that the bounding box is very offset from the object. This time, click on Set Origin, and then go down here near the bottom, but at the center there of the bottom, set your origin point. And now back to Transform Layer, and again click on a corner handle until you see the curved arrow and see what happens. Alright, so if it was something tall that you wanted to fall over, you could accomplish that. I'm going to hit Control Z, and again I had to hit Control Z twice because I did two different actions on that object. And of course, I'm sure you're getting the idea of it now. If I click on Set Origin and point to the middle of this tall rectangle, and then with Transform Layer try to rotate, right, it's different. And Control Z again to get that back. Let's create one more layer. New Layer, Vector. Let's name this Box. And then we need to delete these others. So click on Layer 2 and click the trash can, and Layer 1, click the trash can. So you should have Box with nothing in it. Go over here to the Draw Shape icon, choose Rectangle, find a color that you like, and then down here, make a very small rectangle in the lower left. Set the origin point to the center of it. Let's start out with a very basic movement now. Go over here underneath the word layer, click on Transform Layer icon. In the timeline, we'll go to frame 1 first, so you can put a 1 in here and hit Enter. Just click once away from the object to create a keyframe. Down here you can see on frame 1 in the timeline, and also it copied it to frame 0. So there's our keyframe. Slide across, moving the scrub bar to frame 96. Hold your Shift key down and drag it across. By holding Shift down, it helps you to drag in a straight line. Sometimes you need that, sometimes you don't. In this case, let's hold Shift down while we drag. Move it to about here. Now if you pull back and forth on your ruler, pulling the scrub bar across, you'll see this is a very basic movement. I could even push play. You've got a box moving along. Go back to frame 1. We want to set up keyframes on frame 1, for layer translation, rotation, and scale. The way we do that is up here, click on Animation in the main menu, click on Add Keyframe. And you've done this before in another assignment, and you will get used to looking at these, but right now we set up keyframes for point motion, layer translation, layer scale, and Z rotation. Let's move over to frame 96. We're going to make the box bigger right here, and the animation will show that it goes from here to here and gradually gets larger. So point over a corner until you see your diagonal line cursor right here on the bounding box and enlarge it. And it looks like we're going to have to push it up so that it stays on the stage. In fact, we could even drag it here. Okay? And then play that back and see what happened to your rectangle. It moves along and gradually gets larger. Now let's say that we want it to stay still for 2 seconds before it continues moving. Remember, it's 24 frames per second, and these guide marks here in the timeline represent the 24 frames. So if you're working over top of one of the guide marks like we did here with frame 96, you can easily see 2 seconds is going to be to 144. We want it to stay still for 2 seconds. The way we accomplish that, for one thing, when we're at frame 96, the last place where we ended up some movement, go here to Animation, Add Keyframe. Okay, and then slide over here to 144, and again, Animation, Add Keyframe. That's just going to ensure nothing will change between this point and this point. Now I need to horizontally scroll, okay, clicking on the horizontal bar right here, just so that we can see more of our timeline. Now let's say we want the box to move up towards the top of the stage very quickly. In order to get it to move very quickly, we can move only a handful of frames. The last place we put keyframes was on 144. Let's say we only went to I don't know, let's try 150. This is just a few frames. And then with transform layer icon selected, we can push the box up to here. All right, now let's go back to frame 0 and play through to 150. So I'll just put 0 here and hit enter and then push play. So it's growing, and then when it gets to 96, it stops for a bit and then really quickly moves up. Okay, if you wanted it to move up even faster, remember we only went from 144 to 150. We could click on this and push it closer to 144. To test it, I can just click back here on the timeline a bit, push play. Okay, so it moved even a little bit faster. Sometimes it's hard to grab these. Just be persistent about it. I've had trouble too. So if you seem to not be able to move it, don't worry. It's just that they probably should do something about making it easier to slide these around. Again, on this very last place where you made a keyframe, be sure you go right over top of it. And again, since we're going to make a modification, if you're not sure if you're over top of it, you can click on the zoom. Okay, that makes these bigger if you click on zoom once or twice, and it's easier to see if you're right over top of it. All right, I'm going to zoom back out. Again, let's add a set of the keyframes. Animation, add keyframe. So at any time when you're going through the process of moving an object, you can always just click here in the ruler, pulling the scrub bar, and kind of testing to see what's happening with the animation on the object. Now we've got this fast movement. Let's hold it steady here for a second, or something like a second, meaning maybe we'll go to approximately 168, and again create that whole set of keyframes. All right, so here we've got moving up fast and then staying still to there. Now let's have it move, tumble, and get smaller all at the same time from 168 onward. Let's click over to 216. That might end up being pretty slow, but let's see what happens. With transform layer selected, I'm going to move across to the left corner. I will also resize it to be smaller. And I'd like it to tumble across. A good way to do this can be to click up here in the field next to angle and then wheel the mouse and watch the object so that you can see and decide how much you want it to rotate and also which direction and whether or not you want it to lay flat when it's finished or, be tipping upwards or something. There I've got 180. Okay, that's not going to be a whole lot of tumbling. So let's have a look. I'll reach down here into the timeline and just see what happened with my object. Okay, now going back here, I need to move my timeline over. Clicking back over to 16 and looking at the angle I chose. If I want more spin, I just need to increase this number. So I could click in here again and try, let's see, the next was going to be 360 is like one full rotation, 360 degrees, right? So if I do that and then have a look at how much it's tumbling, okay, you see it tumbled more. Now again, I need to find my way back to 216. And if I made this number even higher, let's see, 720 and hit enter. All right, now it's really going to spin a lot. So let me click on, I'll go to frame 0, hit enter, push play. Okay, so that gives you an idea about how you're going to be able to control objects. And now you don't need to save this file, and you can continue to the next lesson.